So Dana, we have the map report here. So let's look at the variability of your classroom by looking at the class breakdown by goal report that's available in MAP and really think about the variability in your class. What do you notice about the breakdown of your class when you look through this report?
Well, looking at the proficiency benchmark scores of about a 194, I'm noticing about 80% of my class fits within that range. So for those learners, what I'm teaching should be on their level. However, I have 2 students above that level, above that benchmark, and 2 students below. So for the students above, I'm going to be extending the lessons, and then for the students below, they're going to need modifications and additional support in order to learn what we're teaching.
Learner variability through data and also personal, experiences with your students, and setting clear goals, and then the context of the learning environment, which is where multiple means of representation, action and engagement, action, expression, and engagement come into play.
Well, looking at the learner variability in this class, I know these learners are going to be, this learner in particular will need things repeated for him in smaller steps. So I will need to address him differently. He will also need additional support through manipulatives. Another student with lower than that band, it's more of a reading issue in that case, so she will need just assistance in reading the tasks. The kids that are outlining above the band are going to need extensions that, I guess, require more steps of them to solve the task. So knowing that will help me meet all their needs in that single session.
Okay, and you'll probably use maybe technology to help you with that too? You won't necessarily have to, but this particular student that's 2 bands below, you had mentioned that he has attention issues,
Right.
and so he might need something like BrainPop that explains a multiplication video in a different way that might keep him a little more engaged.
Definitely.
So for that reteaching piece might be something that could really benefit him.
Exactly, and same with the kids over here. Everybody at some point will be exposed to technology to make the skills more secure, but there's technology that can stretch the kids beyond the band so that they are also learning new information. So I think we'll be doing things like that.
Let's move into the curriculum. We know where your students fall within the math data variability, and now let's dig into the everyday math curriculum. So you're going to be on lesson 4.4. So let's first look at the goal and objective that comes straight from the textbook, and let's make sure that that's clear, and if not, we might need to clean it up just a little.
As stated, the objective is to provide opportunities to model division number stories with arrays, multiplication division diagrams, and number models.
Okay, so to provide opportunities, it kind of sounds like what you're going to do, right, as a teacher? Right. Let's change it to more student-oriented goals, so we know exactly what we want your students to know and be able to do, so that the how is embedded in that goal.
Okay. So then if you put it in their hands, it would be them knowing that they can model and solve the division number stories using those methods.
Exactly. So it might be something like, I can model and solve division number stories.
Right.
And then how they model and solve those division number stories can look incredibly different.
Right.
So we'll move into now thinking about the context of your lesson, where multiple means of representation, action and expression, and engagement are going to come into play. So let's take a look at multiple means of representation right now. With your goal in mind, I can represent and model multiple ways of solving division stories.
Okay, when I think about how I'm going to do that, the multiple means, this lesson will lend itself very well to the number grids and the arrays when they're trying to see the skip counting forward or backward, whether they're multiplying or dividing. Some kids will need manipulatives to see the division and how the multiplication and division are connected. Other students might need more reinforcement with the triangle, the multiplication triangles, because they can see the relationship between multiplication and division in this lesson. So we'll have all those things. The other piece that I think everybody would be exposed to, but they might need more support on this end, would be just the basic, how do we solve a problem? The guide to solving number stories goes through the steps that kids need to do with any kind of number story.
So that would kind of be a scaffold for
Right.
students who might not be there yet with that thinking
Right.
process.
You might have to lead them through it versus watching other kids who move themselves through it independently.
Expression. How are the kids going to show what they know and that they're moving forward? For example, this student who was 2 bands below in his RIT band, we know it's not realistic for him to jump to that 194. He's between 121 and 130 right
Right,
now, but
right.
we need him to grow.
Right.
So how are we going to know that he's growing, that your students within that 80% are growing, and those students that needed that extension? What things do you have in mind how are you going to know that they have learned what you've intended them?
It will look different for each group of kids because I will need to be watching him work and actually seeing his thinking by what he's doing. So I will actually need to not have him hand in something finished, but watch him working through it, have him talk through his thinking so that I know if he's getting those early multiplication skills before he really connects it to division. So his would be observation along with what he's doing. Kids that are within the band quite often, and some of these kids might also come this way, but the majority of these kids will show me if they can do it with the pages they produce that day. So most of them will be working independently, and then as they hand in their journals and I check them at lunch, then I will know who needs reteaching tomorrow, who got the information. The kids on this end of the band, they also need to be met with and work needs to be looked at because quite often they are quick to get answers down, but they aren't always as successful explaining their thinking. So they will need a conversation. So typically, I would meet with those kids at the end of class and see what they've come up with and work through what we need to do to continue to grow.
Once again, just to kind of recap this, you first of all, you looked at learner variability. And within that, you looked at map data, your class breakdown, and then knowing what you know about your learners, like saying she struggles in reading, he has trouble with attention, so I'm going to need to promote engagement a little more for this guy so he can stay engaged. So learner variability, knowing the variability through maps and personal variability, and then setting clear goals. So you took a look at that objective and kind of cleaned it up so that the kids know exactly what they're expected to do.
Right.
And you know exactly where you're headed with them too. So setting clear goals, and then thirdly, you looked at the context of your lesson, and that's where you designed ahead of time the multiple means of representation that would be needed to address the learner variability in your classroom. Okay, thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Students who had already achieved the learning goal for the day did not have to participate in the mini lesson. Instead, their teacher got them started on an extension activity.
So I noticed today at the beginning of the lesson, for the mini lesson, that you didn't have to sit and listen to that. Can you explain to me why that might be?
Well, I already knew how to divide, and my teacher was giving something to challenge me.
Where do you go in your classroom to know the clear goal for the day for math?
I look at the board, or my teacher shouts it out at us.
Oh, so your teacher either reads it out loud to you, or you can look up at the board also? Okay, perfect, thank you. Clear learning goals are placed on the board in order for students to see their goal for the day.
So you could use multiplication. You kind of thought multiplication was division. When the girls, could you split up those kisses? Yes. Split the kisses. How many would each person get? 5. Each person would get 5. 5. Per child or kid, right? That's what you found out, right? What did we put in the diagram that we're trying to find out? Right? We put a question mark there. We started with 15. Then what do we do?
Divided by 3.
Divided by 3. And it equals 5. Now, when we multiply multiply, we have names for the number.
What's the difference?
Oh.
Let's look at this problem. 312 divided by 12 equals 26. The number 312 is the dividend. The number 12 is the divisor. Let's look at the same problem written another way. The number 312 is still the dividend.
What are your divided by? And then the answer in division problem, start with a Q. Remember? Quotient. Say it once. Quotient. Quotient is what you get when you do the division. You get the quotient.
Well, when I use technology, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and by watching videos, it helps, like, about math. It really sticks in my brain, and it can help me.
Mrs. Riley has considered the variability of this small group and has decided that what they need most is to be able to talk among themselves about the problems that they have been working on during their independent work time. They have the opportunity to get feedback from their teacher as well as each other during this time. This small group needed an application to the learning goal or an extension. Many of them were able to meet their learning goal early on in the lesson. They were not required to do all of the math journal pages, but only certain items that would help measure the knowledge in a formative assessment. This group worked on a challenging puzzle. The learner variability in this group was considered in many ways. Mrs. Riley, when meeting with the small group, made sure she read the problems aloud to the small group. She also allowed them to use the manipulatives and the whiteboard to solve the problems. She also provided a scaffold in the form of an organizer that broke down the steps on how to solve word problems.
Wrote 39. Yeah, you will. So 6 times, it's 36 divided by 30 is 5. It's 5. So, no, it said 30. Yeah, so you were right, 30 right there. Wait, I did. 30.
So, can you tell me what way was the best way for you to learn today during the many multiple representations that were used?
Well, it was the whiteboard because I could write stuff out and it gave me more space to write and stuff, and I just liked using it.
Okay. Do you think that everybody liked using the whiteboard?
No.
What were some of the other things that other people liked using?
Maybe it was the counters, maybe the cubes, maybe the videos.
So everybody kind of had a choice in how they took in the information?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you were able to use other ways to show what you learned today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.